Hello, welcome back. So this is my first top 10 slash list video that I've ever done on this channel. So bear with me if it's a bit rough around the edges, but I wanted to do the top 20 horror games, my top 20. So obviously leave your top 20 down below in the comments, and hopefully I mentioned some of the ones that you like or dislike depending on what you've played, and if there's any that you like that haven't made the list, obviously let me know as well, just so that I can check them out if I haven't already. So the only rule that I've given myself with this list is to only do one title per franchise. So even if your favourite franchise might be in this list, your favourite game from that franchise might not be. Who knows? But anyway, let's get into it. So, in at number 20, we have Jericho. So Jericho was created by Clive Barker, who created one of my favourite horror movies, which is Nightbreed. So you all probably thought I was going to say Hellraiser, and I do like that franchise as well. I love the first three Hellraisers. I think after that they get a bit weird. But Nightbreed, if you haven't seen it, or the original story, Cabal, both worth checking out. But he created this video game, and it is very, very Clive Barker. I would say I played it on the Xbox 360. It was back then a little bit glitchy occasionally, but still very enjoyable. It's kind of got a weird story to it in the fact that you've got this team of essentially, I guess, like demon hunters. There's about 6 of them, and the way that you can change between different characters is quite good. It's quite a good twist in the story, so I won't spoil it just in case you go and play it. But you've got about 6 different characters, as I mentioned, and each one of those has a different skill or skill set. So you have ones that are quite close range, you have ones that are sort of tanks with miniguns, things like that. You have snipers, and it's all very sort of fast-paced, quite mystical, has some really, really great villains in it. It's first person, as you could probably see from the footage, and yeah, it was a good, solid horror game. It was very, very Clive Barker, and if you know his films, you'll know what I mean. But it was definitely worth mentioning on here, and I think since then it's had some sort of patches and things like that, so it's probably a bit more stable now. But if you're a horror fan, it's definitely worth checking out. So in number 19 we have The Suffering, and this was a third person sort of horror style beat 'em up game, and this was originally on the original Xbox, which is where I played it, and it was on the PS2 and PC as well. It's probably still around in certain places if you're a retro gamer. It was more of a sort of gore fest. It was very action orientated. The story revolved around your main character, who didn't speak, but he was on a prison island, and this island tends to bring out the evil in most people, and that was also a way of bringing out monsters. It could also sort of bring out these different kinds of monsters and beings in all of the prisoners and some of the creatures that were coming into this island, and it made your main character turn into a monster. So it was a bit of like an Incredible Hulk scenario if the Incredible Hulk had massive blades on his hands and like dismembering people, which, you know, maybe in some comics he does. But it was really good at the time. It was a lot of fun. I think I played it as a teen, and it was totally my jam back then because it was just all out action. It was a bit ridiculous and very, very gory. It had some great finishes in it, but it was also quite spooky. It had some really strange and scary sort of parts about it as well, and there was some great boss battles in it. So yeah, that's made my list purely for nostalgia, I think, more than anything. But I think if I played it now, I probably wouldn't enjoy it as much, but I think at the time it was just perfect for me. So in at number 18 is Doom 3. So this is one that divided the fans, and obviously there was quite a leap between, or a long time between Doom 2 and 3. Doom 3, I'd say, for me, was a great horror experience because it was slightly darker, a bit moodier, and it had some great set pieces in it in terms of like a lot of the levels that were given to us on this one were very dark. There was a lot of dark corridors. There was a lot of places where you didn't quite know if something was going to jump out of the shadows at you, and that gave you more jump scares than the old Doom game, so it felt a bit more horror than like a sort of action game, which is what Doom, I guess, was known for. Obviously the newer ones, the Doom remake and Doom Eternal are more fast-paced action games with, just like grinding your enemies to dust and loads of finishers and listening to metal and stuff like that, which is great. But at the time, I think I really liked this game because it just had some really spooky elements to it. Also, they were quite unforgiving with the amount of ammo that was going on, so you couldn't always find ammo for all the guns that you wanted to use, so you really had to preserve it, and you really had to think about what you were going to use at the time, and I really liked that. I really enjoyed that part of the game. So yeah, Doom 3 is on the list purely because it felt to me like they were going down a scarier route. It wasn't just action anymore, it was quite spooky, and for me that's what got me into it. So yeah, that's why this one's on there. So at number 17 we've got The Thing, and this is the game kind of the movie. It's more of a sequel to the original movie with Kurt Russell, and this game is a third-person action game. I originally played it on the first Xbox, and it's still available in a lot of places, I think, to download. It's really, really good. It's a great horror experience, just because you do get that feeling that the people that make this really loved that original film. It does give you a lot of paranoia and mistrust in a lot of the crew and the people that you're sort of doing this with, and the people that you discover, which is just like the movie. It ends really ambiguously. This game carries on with that kind of theme. So if you like that kind of thing, and if you're a fan of the movie, definitely check out this game. It's really, really good. And yeah, even though the graphics are obviously a little bit dated now and a little bit ropey with some of these older horror games it still will give you a good scare. So definitely check it out. So in at number 16 is a launch title for the Xbox 360, and that is Condemned: Criminal Origins. So this one is another first-person game. Now, horror seems to do a lot of first-person games, but this one was great just because it was more close combat. So it wasn't, even though you had guns in it, they were very scarce. You couldn't get a lot of ammo for it, but most of the time you were using hand-to-hand combat, and you were hitting your enemies, who were basically all made crazy in this city. So the other thing that I really liked about it as well is it kind of gave into the more sort of detective aspects of being in a horror game. So you were trying to figure out what was going on, but you were also going into crime scenes and taking forensic photos and solving little puzzles like that. It had some great moments in it where you were going through crime scenes and looking for fingerprints, looking for different clues. And I quite like that about it. It wasn't just all action, and it had quite a nice sort of story to tell in the fact that you were uncovering this sort of unknown force, this unknown evil that was making everyone crazy. And yeah, I really enjoyed that. And as a launch title for the Xbox 360, it looked amazing as well. It had some really great atmosphere, and it was the first time I was seeing a horror game where I was looking at it thinking, this is quite realistic. And it has some great jump scares. So if you can check it out, there is a sequel to it as well. I think I only played the first one. I haven't really played the second one, so that's why the first one is here on the list. But I do intend to check the second one out at some point. But yeah, if you get a chance, definitely have a look at that one, especially just for the fact that it is close combat. It's something that's quite visceral, because you'd have to get up close with your enemies, and that's one thing that I really enjoyed about it. It was quite new. So in at number 15 we have Obscure. So this is one of my favourite horror games on the original Xbox. This was so good. It's basically like a sort of teen horror film. It's created a bit like The Faculty in the way that the sort of establishing huge shot of the game introduce you to each character with the soundtrack of a song by Sum 41, so you can tell already that it's sort of that teen horror pop punk genre. The funny thing about this game is that you play each one of these teens, and basically you play them until they die. So when you get one of them killed, that's it, they're dead. And then you have to go and play one of the other characters. So you can either choose to go and find that, dead friend and see if they had some clues or if they had something that you needed for the quest, or just think, don't want to go down there, that's where they died, I'm going to try somewhere else. And yeah, it was great. It was a lot of fun, and it added to that sense of I'm really in danger here, because once you found out that your characters could die and be dead forever, it made you think a lot more carefully about the puzzles that you were going for and the sort of battles you were getting into, basically. The good thing about this game as well is that it had monsters that were afraid of light, a bit like the sort of Alone in the Dark series or Alan Wake. So you had to be very clever about where you were going to be in a certain classroom and, blocking certain bits of light and then uncovering it when they get near to you, or taking a torch with you. So it was a lot of fun. It was a really good game, and I fully recommend it. I've only recently found out that there's a sequel, so I'm going to have to find that and find a way to play it, because I couldn't get enough of the original game. Definitely want to find out what happens in the second one, even though I'm pretty sure that most of my characters were dead pretty much every time I played it, the first one. So who knows? But maybe the second one will make this list. Maybe it's even better. Who knows? So at number 14, we have Soar, the video game. So this is the first video game that they made of Soar, as far as I'm aware. And it follows the main character, who's David Tapp, and he is going through typically a Saw film as we know it. Jigsaw has set out lots of traps. Immediately he's put into the trap that we saw Amanda in the second movie, which is the sort of big reverse bear trap kind of thing on the face. But after that you have to go through a series of puzzles and tests just like in the movies, but then you find out that there is other people that are in other traps that are hunting you, because your character has a key that might unlock their trap in his chest. So there's an added level of stress because people are after you because of what's inside you. And so you have to be very careful. You have to be really good at solving the puzzles, but also you have to be really careful about every room that you go into. And it had a whole great twist on it. It does include characters from the movies like Amanda. So if you're a Saw fan, which I am, I do like some of the Saw films, especially 4. I think 4 is probably my favourite. But yeah, if you're a Saw fan, you'll probably really like this. And also it's definitely a good one for if there's either a lot of you around, even though there's one of you that can play, you can all help solve puzzles. It's also good as a backseat gamer. It's something that you could definitely watch as a backseat gamer and really get into. So that's definitely one that I recommend for doing that as well. So in at number 13, we have Cold Fear. So this is another one that was on the original Xbox years ago. It's kind of like an old school Resident Evil style game, where with those sort of fixed cameras. Now, I wasn't always a fan of those when they came out on the original PlayStation. As much as I love horror and I liked watching them, I just didn't like playing the fixed camera Resident Evil games. There is a Resident Evil game on this list, and you'll have to wait and see which one it is, but that might give you a clue as to what's not on there. But Cold Fear, really good third person game. It's a game that's set on a ship. So you're in the middle of the ocean on the ship that's infested with this kind of the crazy parasites that can take over people, very much like The Thing. And it's all about sort of trying to stay alive, but also trying to figure out what's happened, and also trying to get to either a port or oil rig, or just get off this ship basically. And it was a lot of fun. It has some great jump scares, and it also has a real weird atmosphere about it, where it's one of those horror games that you really don't want to turn the corner sometimes. So yeah, Cold Fear, if you can find it, great game. Bit of a hidden gem, but definitely one I'd recommend. So in at number 12 is a bit of a controversial one, because I think people would have thought it would have been higher on my list. It's the game that I finished most recently, and that is Alien Isolation. So I'm a huge fan of the Alien franchise. I love those films, all of them. I have a little place in my heart for each and every one for various reasons. So we recently watched all of those films again. We're in lockdown in the UK. It's 2021. So what do? You pick franchises of movies and watch them all. And so, yeah, we finished the Alien franchise. And I remembered that I'd started Alien Isolation years ago and stopped because some other game came along and I just wasn't feeling it. So I re-downloaded it and went back to it and really enjoyed it. The first half of it was really, really atmospheric. It was really scary. It felt like I was in that first Alien movie. So in this one you play Amanda Ripley, who is Ripley's daughter. But Ripley doesn't have a daughter, I hear you say. Well, she kind of did. In a deleted scene of Aliens, Ripley asks about the fate of her daughter Amanda, and she's told that Amanda reached the ripe old age of, I think, 65, 66, something like that, and then died. But in this one, we play, obviously, Amanda when she's much younger, and she's, another Ripley. She's a bold, badass character, and you are going back to the places where her mother was and where she essentially, met the creature for the first time, the xenomorph. Obviously, this game is famous for having the one alien, like the first movie. And as much as it was really scary to begin with, the reason why this game is farther down the list than I would have thought is because it outstayed its welcome. It became really tedious. Instead of being scary, after a while, the alien got so overused and was just following us constantly that it became annoying. It wasn't fun anymore. It wasn't giving us the scares. It was just, oh, come on, just leave. You were just in a closet or a locker or something, just playing hide and seek all the time and waiting for it to go. And whereas that started to be really tense, it turned into something that, became quite annoying. And also, the later on in the game, you get to have more weapons. And knowing what we know about the Alien franchise, we know how to kill an alien now. We know that they're not indestructible. So having this huge arsenal of weapons and explosives and all the good things that you can get in an Alien game and still not being able to kill the xenomorph was quite frustrating. And you'll probably notice on this list that I'm not a fan of horror games where you can't really defend yourself. I do find them a little bit frustrating, but still enjoyable. But this one was, I don't know, it really frustrated me, and I also felt like it was a bit too long. It had real pacing issues where it built up to something that you were thinking was going to be this really big either reveal or a big ending or something like that, and then it just went back to doing the same things again. And I think that happened about 3 or 4 times. And it got to the point where, I was kind of hoping that the game was at its end, and when it did end, it felt like a bit of a letdown. So there you go, Alien Isolation. Check it out and see what you think, or let me know what you think about it. But yeah, I definitely think it was one that deserved to be down the list a bit more. And the final one for this half, number 11, was one of my favourite horror games. And I'd say it's probably more of an action game than a horror game, but it still deserves to be in here. And that is Left 4 Dead 2. Oh, it's so good. So this is one that is great to play with friends, especially couch co-op. Now, you don't get many games now that are, ones that you can play with a friend in the same room. And I love co-op games. I'm all about that sort of couch co-op experience of both of you, tackling this world together. And you got a great sense of that in this one. It's kind of split into levels that are more like movies. So each one has a movie poster, it has a scenario, and you get from A to B with 4 different points where you can sort of save in these safe rooms. And it's a first-person action game. It's you against a horde of zombies, and every time you play, the zombies are in a different place, or they'll be a different pack, or some of the sort of mutated monsters will be in different places, but you're basically trying to get to the end of the level each time, the end of the scenario, the movie, and to fend off this horde while you wait for something to save you, whether it's a helicopter or a boat or whatever. The end might be either a rock concert, or it'll be some kind of abandoned house in the middle of nowhere. It just has these great sort of classic horror scenarios, and you play these 4 characters that you can chop and change between, but they all are essentially the same in terms of what they can do. But it really does feel like you against the world. You're sort of overwhelmed by all of these creatures, and yeah, it's just a real fun game to play, and it does have some scary elements to it, and I don't know many people who can play that game and not hear the cries of the witch that's in it and then think, oh god, I'm not going down there. So it's definitely got some scares in it. But yeah, that is one of my favourites. The reason why it's not in the top 10 is because it doesn't really have a story. Even though I say that each scenario is like a movie, they are literally just scenarios where you're getting from one place to another. They don't really have a story, or don't really have any kind of narrative to them. It is more of a sort of arcade style horror game. I do love a narrative. I do love a really good story, but I had to include it in this one just because it's so much fun to play, and it is one of those games where if someone wants a 2-player experience and they want something that is fun and fast-paced and also can be sort of drop in, drop out, and you can play it in one evening with one scenario, this is the game for you. So definitely check it out if you haven't seen it before. I'd say the second one probably over the first one. The second one has a lot more going for it, and it has a lot more scenarios for you to play, including some that you can download that were created by the community. So it's definitely one to look out for. It's sad that they never got to make a third one because it was so popular. I'm not sure why Valve never made another one, but this one's great, so I'll just keep playing this one. So that's it. We've reached the end of this half. We've gone from 20 to 11. The next video obviously is from 10 to 1. And that is my list so far. So let me know what you think down in the comments. A few honourable mentions that didn't make the cut. Clock Tower from the PS1. Great game, very tense. Had a great baddie that was like chasing you with a massive pair of scissors or shears. It was really creative, a great sort of puzzle game, but it just didn't make the top 20. Other honourable mentions from the Alien franchise include Alien Trilogy, which was on the PlayStation 1, which was amazing, and that went through lots of different scenarios from the first 3 movies. It was fantastic, but very scary. And Alien Resurrection on the PlayStation 1 as well. So even though a lot of people didn't like the movie, the game was so scary. And it was the first time where you felt like the aliens were more aware of you, and they would hide, and they would sit still on the ceiling, and you'd have to go and find them. So definitely, yeah, check that out if you can do. But obviously Alien Isolation won out of that franchise just because that was the one that I think had a little bit more nuance and had a little bit more to say about the franchise. Anyway, thank you for watching, and obviously the next half of this video will be out very soon. And leave the comments below, let me know what you think of this, and let me know your favourite top 20 as well for horror games. There are some great ones coming out pretty soon, so hopefully I'll be able to play those on this channel as well. But yeah, I'll see you next time, and thank you for watching.